Welcome to Philosophy of the Barber. Today's guest is Corey Holt, owner of Stay True Barbershop. He is an Uppercut Deluxe Collective member and currently lives in Southern California. Northern, sorry. I don't know my geography.
It's all good.
Well, welcome, Corey.
Hey, how's it going?
We haven't really had a chance to catch up in, 8 years almost?
Actually, yeah, because I think I finished school June or July 2012, so yeah, 8 years.
Gosh, it's been a while.
Yeah.
So the whole situation with the podcast is that we're just going to be talking about your life and your personal journey and how that's how you found barbering and what that means in your life and how it's going moving forward. So let's have a little bit of backstory on where you're from and where you've been and how you found barbering in the first place.
I hope people are ready to be bored by that then. That is a boring story.
Cliff's notes it.
So I had been an assistant manager at Daddy's Junkie Music in Manchester. Well, what was that, like 12, 13 years ago? I met Josh Craigie, the owner of Lucky's Barbershop. He was just opening the shop at the time. I remember going in to the shop after he gave me a card, like the second day the shop officially opened. Got cut by him and really just kind of rediscovered going to the barbershop because it had been since I was a little kid. And then fast forward a few years, I was working retail management and kind of just saw it as a dead-end road. There was no path to kind of keep growing with that. I talked to Josh, and Josh told me to go to barber school, which is where we met. And literally the day after him and I had that conversation, I was signed up for school. And a couple weeks after that, I started and just worked overnights because I still had like a house to pay for and bills and everything. So I was working overnights Sunday night through Thursday night into Friday morning and going to school Monday through Saturday during the day, sleeping a couple hours a night, being constantly exhausted. But I really just wanted to get done school as quick as I possibly could so I could start working. And then shortly after that, met Dave from Wilfred's, worked for him for a couple of years, we grew fairly well together, and then parted ways in 2015 in May, and then I opened Stay True in July officially of the same year. So it was a pretty quick turnaround actually to getting my own spot, from going from not really knowing what I was going to do for a couple of weeks to instantly just kind of found the right spot and made it work. I guess the rest is history.
Now, speaking from personal experience, I do recall a few naps taken here and there in barber school.
A few naps. I was pretty much not conscious during classroom time at all. I remember Dave actually giving me the option to if I did all the homework for school, that I could count that homework time towards my classroom time so that I could finish stuff out a little quicker. I never did an ounce of homework. I'm just glad that didn't count as a grade. Otherwise, I would have been up the creek without a paddle.
As long as you pass the test, they don't care.
That was the thing. I passed all his tests and then passed the state boards just fine. I think his reputation, at least as far as I knew up until us going through, was nobody had gotten less than a 90 on the written or the practical ever. I hope that's still the case up there for any SOB, but I just remember it taught us so much more than that, but I don't know. I'm glad I got out of it what I got out of it because I was tired all the time.
I do know that they have still a pretty high pass rate. I can't necessarily say that the grade is as high as it once was, but the pass rate is still in the 90s, 90-something percent.
So that's awesome. So doing something right, obviously. Trained us right.
And they've been able to adapt to many classes since then.
That's good.
Ups and downs. with new people coming through, different generations.
You're still in there part-time, right?
I am teaching there 2 days a week.
You are? Oh, that's awesome.
That actually started because they just opened last Monday, after being closed for the quarantine. So, being subject to the same restrictions that we are right now is interesting when dealing with students learning on real heads.
I can only imagine.
We have timers at the stations.
Oh, really?
They get about a half an hour to do what they can do, and then an instructor will come over and do some more instructing on top of what they did and finish it up.
Kind of just making the best of the situation.
Oh, we've got an hour to work in, so.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like the rules that they've created, because I mean, out in California, at least we just opened back up in Sonoma where I live, but the shop that I had been working at is currently still has to remain closed because they don't meet the state minimum requirements the state gave per county for the counties to open back up. But here, I'm glad to hear that the hairdryer rule got lifted because we didn't know about that. That seemed like something that kind of snuck under the radar. But some of it seemed like it wasn't necessarily written by the barber board because some stuff doesn't make sense. And we're all making the best of the situation. We're all doing what we have to do. But it was just like you're reading some of it and it was like, who made this up?
Yeah, as somebody in the profession, you definitely get the impression that the barber board did not write it.
Yeah.
In fact, some of them, in my personal opinion, are very arbitrary. For a very quick example, while we're on the subject, is all right, so customer and barber both have to wear masks because we can't social distance. And the only people who are allowed in the shop are either getting a service or giving a service, right?
Yeah.
Then tell me why, when everyone is wearing a mask, my stations have to be 6 feet apart instead of 4.
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
And that's the thing with us is like I have a 5-chair shop and luckily we didn't have 5 barbers because I don't know what I would do to make that work. It kind of stresses me out even just thinking about it, and I don't even have that situation. But for us, like until this changes, I can only operate at 60%, and I can only imagine the chairs that are 8 and 10 chair shops or like somewhere like Dudes, for example. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a lot of unused space.
Josh was fortunate enough and he made his situation work great for his guys. And I know he's going above and beyond with safety as he always has, with safety and cleanliness, having 2 shops, with the amount of barbers that he had. Cause it's tough. It's tough for all barbers. Like out in Oregon's rules are insane.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't really heard anything much of.
So talking to one of my friends, opening up his shop again, they had to have disposable aprons for themselves and for the capes for the clients, surgical grade gloves, not nitrile. They have to actually have surgical gloves and the surgical mask and they have to have at least 2 face shields so that one can be being sanitized while you're wearing the other face shield for a haircut, and then your surgical mask and surgical gloves and surgical cape have to be changed every single time for you. And I'm just like,
it sounds so wasteful.
That's so overboard. And that's the problem is even he admitted it costs an arm and a leg to obtain all that. For one thing, it's unrealistic to ask that of people, unfortunately. And a lot of shops can't open. Like he can't even open 1 or 2 of his shops just because of that, because he can't get enough PPE for all the shops.
Right.
He just can't obtain it, so he can't open.
Well, and I feel like basic logic is somehow removed from a lot of these decisions, because if you just break it down to basic, which New Hampshire has done a little bit with their guidelines, is that something is either porous or non-porous.
Yep.
If it's non-porous, it can be disinfected. Well, the whole reason for wearing gloves is because it's non-porous, which means they can technically be disinfected.
Yes.
So why can't they be used the same way the face shields are?
Especially if you pay for surgical gloves. We're not talking like a 100-pack box of nitrile examination gloves, which doctors still use all the time, and they're still using. it's almost, and I get it, they're planning for the worst case scenario, and I'm happy to see that somebody is at least, they're probably being too much with it, or I know they are, but I think they're also just trying to make everybody in and around everywhere as comfortable as we can be given the situation. And this is honestly kind of a crazy interview, because when you talked about doing this, I was pumped. Then I started just thinking like how much our industry changed in the blink of an eye, and nobody was prepared for this.
Well, and I think that as people who are very well versed in what our industry requires at all times and why they require it at all times, just it boggles my mind out of fear of all things that they're piling so much more on, when unlike a lot of other professions, we are always held to such a high standard of sanitation in order to not spread anything to anybody. We're never allowed to work when we're sick. We're never allowed to do anything to pass anything to anybody else. Always.
Exactly.
So why that's suddenly not enough? Like, if you just gave us our normal stuff and said also wear a mask, that would make sense to me, because we're already covering all the other things.
100%. I mean, that's kind of, so many people have asked us, well, what does it change for you? And I was like, well, we already do sterilize we sanitize everything in between every client anyway. The only things that have changed are the things that we did daily at the end of the day rather than hourly between cuts. We do hourly between cuts now, and we wear a mask.
Right.
That's really what it boils down to, because like if you were doing less than that, what were you doing?
Right.
Like I question that, and it's funny. I just think of like some of the stuff that Dave would joke about in school, and I've seen some of it firsthand. For example, like, he was big on having an air compressor at the shop, and we don't have anywhere. So up until this point, we had been using compressed cans of air, and we're paranoid about anybody saying anything about air blowing, that we're just like, no, we're not going to use that. We'll just make sure we really get deep in with the brushes to clean out each blade and everything. But I've seen barbers like mid haircut, rather than pick up a brush or pick up a can of air and brush it off well before this, just I'm like, what did you just do? I'm like, and I've had to say it to somebody where it's like, dude, can you please, can you grab your cool care real quick and just give that a little spritz before you touch my head again? Like, I saw it, I was,
I can just remember Cynthia from across the barber school hearing somebody blow and immediately whipping her head around and go, who did that? You don't do that. And I've got to be the same way. Like, if I ever heard that noise, I would have whiplash. Just from being like, what are you doing? No, you do not do that. And that's just how we were taught. Like, that's the level of education that we received.
I mean, I feel like they were always obviously super thorough with haircuts, especially pushing stuff like flat tops and shaves on us being important. And it baffles me how many people that graduated around our time that found neither of those things to be valuable, whether they were valuable assets or worth doing. But the thing that I could say was that I took away more than anything was, if you're the cleanest barber and you're the most respectable to your clients, and like, be you, but be a respectable version of you. So if you're like, I have a hard time. I swear like a sailor. I try to contain myself in the shop, but it's also that thing of, some of that is kind of my personality. So it's like, be you, but be a reasonable you, and know if you've got somebody in the chair or somebody else in the shop.
Know your audience.
Know your audience, but know that, and just be the cleanest person around and be the cleanest shop around. And that will go further than haircut ability. Haircut ability will take time, and it wasn't, he instilled that so much in us, and just like, here's this trick, but I really don't want you doing it because you don't know the basics yet. And I want you to know the basics, because the basics can take you a long way, but conversation and cleanliness is everything in a barbershop, more so than anything else.
Right. The trade we can grow and we can continue to learn in shop, but if you don't have that foundation of sanitation and personable ability, that's 80%. That's 80% of what we do. The other 20% is the act of cutting hair and leaving it on the head.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I look at the haircuts that I did 8 years ago, and I'm like, why do these people still come to my barbershop? Like, I can't believe they stuck with me for 2 weeks, let alone 8 years. And obviously the ability came with time, thankfully for me, but like, it was having those conversations and getting to know people, and that's really so much about it. Like, if you don't know your clients, you don't have clients, you have customers.
Right.
And that's the difference too that he taught us, is there's a client and there's a customer, and you can make a customer a client, but
well, they walk into your shop to get a haircut first.
Yeah.
Keep coming back for you.
Exactly. That's well said. That's what I was trying to get out, but the words wasn't coming into my brains.
So, and that actually is one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast, is because the whole tradition of Thirsty Thursdays at school, I know you, with your work and everything, I don't think you probably stayed for any of those, but
No, I had to, I would, Thursday nights, I would actually leave school, and since it was our later day, by like the extra hour, I wouldn't have the 2 hours of sleep before work. So I would actually go to work and I would sleep in my car in the parking lot.
Right.
And just, I don't know. The second half of my evening at work would actually be working on a Zamboni, just cleaning the floors at Lowe's, doing my overnight. And I'd fall asleep on that all night long. Oh, crashing into everything. What was that? Oh, nothing. Why does the floor look that way? I thought an X pattern would look better than nice straight lines.
I'm kind of going for that whole bowling alley.
Yeah, I was like, I figured if I went over it enough, eventually I would cover the whole area, overlapping the places where I fell asleep. You fell asleep? No, I didn't say that. So no, I never got to participate in that, but at least I did. There was plenty of lunches, you know.
So much of it is the philosophy of barbering and how life compares to barbering that I think what sets our school experience apart, in my opinion, is really the amount of investment that they have in you as a person, that it's like next to impossible to leave there without being a better person than when you first came.
And that's just it. That's 100%. Completely agree with that. And that's the thing that I've had with barbers. I mean, the barbers that I have working for me, I hired based on their personality and who they were as a person. What are their core values? Because that stuff you can't change. You can make somebody that has never cut hair in their life an amazing barber, but you can't make a shitty person a good person.
Right.
And I even think Dave was, for the most part, he was very thorough with that, and even just who he wanted to come to the school. Like, you had to have some ethics walking in there. Not necessarily work, but like personal ethics you had to have walking in there, or and like you could tell kind of the difference between some people, because there were some people that were just students that they wanted to be outside as much as possible, and he didn't give to them what he gave to us.
By virtue of not being a Title IV school like most barber schools where you get federal financial aid, you had to be financially invested in this venture. So you had to commit to yourself, like monetarily, that you were committed enough to go through with it, because otherwise you're just out however much money you spent to go to school if you decided to quit halfway through. Unlike, the ease of being able to sign away on a piece of paper and be like, okay, I'll pay however much a month for, a decade.
10, 20 years, yeah.
It was, you needed to be invested right then and there, and you better be paid off by the time you're done.
Yep.
And I think that brings a different caliber of student through their door.
For sure. I remember even in my situation, I was thankful enough. I didn't have that good of a credit score because I'd had some issues with a car that I had. or the car that I had at school, that green Volkswagen. Go figure, Volkswagen had problems. But like my mom helped me co-sign on my loan, and she offered she was like, well, let me just help you out with this. And I was like, you already helped me out with college, and that didn't pan out at all. I'm not doing anything with that degree. I'm a department manager right at the moment at a store. Like,
What is your degree?
I have a degree in I have a associates in science for audio production engineering. I was going for the bachelor's, and then it just ended up not being worth it. And I worked in live sound for like 2 months, and I hated every second of it.
Should have called you sooner.
It wasn't what I thought it was going to be, and I wanted to do that since I was in middle school. So it was kind of a letdown in that respect. But I found this, and I've never been happier. I mean, I have a job now I've never once taken home with me, except for like, I have that one person that might have been kind of a dick on the phone, over something that's like out of your control. I mean, we all deal with it, and that goes across any profession. It doesn't matter what it is. There's just certain people are just the way that they are, and we can't do anything about that. And I go home, and my wife would ask me, how was your day? And I'm like, oh, there's this one guy, and he did this thing. And she'd be like, oh yeah, your life sucks, huh? Because I would let it consume me a little bit, and then it's like, all right, in retrospect, no, you're right. Like, I had 11 awesome people in my chair today. Like, that was 11 hours of work. That was a damn good day. Like, so she grounded me a lot with that. I'm thankful to have her for that stuff, because I'd probably be a little grumpier of a barber than what I am, just for those bad experiences, because it's so much easier to think about the bad stuff than good stuff.
Oh yeah,
that's just human psychology.
You can see that on the internet all the time.
Exactly.
It's way easier to first complain than it is to congratulate.
Yeah. Forget where I was going with this. I go on tangents. I'm sorry.
That's kind of the point.
What were we talking about? I don't know.
But I mean, you've come, like, in 8 years, you went from being single in school
to a year later I met my wife, and then a year after that we were married. So we've been together a little over 7 years. We've been married like 6.25 years now. We have a 13-year-old and a 5.5-year-old. So a lot changed, and a lot changed really quickly. I think that might have helped me mature a lot. But I mean, work was always, before them anyway, work was always number one. Like, I took working very seriously, and I think this finally gave me a sense of achievement and accomplishment, where before it was just kind of, you do something and you might get a little pat on the back, but they're like, well, why didn't you do this though? And with barbering, there kind of isn't that.
Unless you have, somebody that wants to give you their 2 cents on your business.
Yeah. But those are the people that you just hope don't come back or you don't listen to.
Or it's like, oh, thank you for your opinion.
Yeah.
I'm going to do what I want to do.
Yep. And that's just it. And that's the one thing I like about being an owner, is I can do the stuff that I wanted to do. And like some of the stuff that I wanted to do, even, when I was finishing up school, that I wanted to do professionally, that I just couldn't get done. And being an owner has let me do that stuff, but it's also let me hire the people that I wanted to hire and have the people around me. And I think that's probably more so than anything, one of the most important things is just surrounding yourself with not just positivity, but just genuinely good people. I think in this industry especially, I think that makes all the world of difference, especially given the tensions and the social climate in this country, more so than ever in the last years, but even the last just couple weeks.
Well, I think anybody in any profession can agree that there are good and bad people in every job.
Absolutely.
You possibly have. 100%. So like you'll get the total like you know they're not going to go anywhere and they just want to do the minimum, or they want to try and get away with stuff. Like, you're going to get that in every profession.
Yep.
And then you're going to get the ones who are super driven and who want to be there and are willing to invest the extra time and effort. And you thank whoever you believe in thanking for the fact that they're willing to be there. Because as an owner, you can't have the expectation of anybody loving your shop the way that you do, because it's unfair.
And that's still something that I'm trying to get used to.
Aren't we all?
5 years into it, it's been a regular conversation a lot with my wife, is just, why doesn't this person want to work more? Why doesn't this person want to do that? And she's just like, well, that's what you want to do. And you wanted to do this before you owned your shop. So that's just you. Like, you can't expect everybody to have your personality and your thought process with stuff. That's just, one, unrealistic, and two, that's why it's your place. And it really does, I don't know, I'm making it sound like it's like terrible to work for somebody, and it's not. Like, some people are, I mean, like, I don't know what I do without Caleb. I mean, Caleb runs the shop, and Matt's my secondary guy. Like, without those two guys, I don't have Stay True Barbershop. And for them, I'm incredibly thankful. Because especially with me being in California now, more so than ever, I'm still, to a degree, the face of the shop out here, but to an even bigger degree, like, they're the shop. So thankfully enough, I have two people that have the same values that I have. We're very straightforward with how we feel. We don't sugarcoat anything. And if you don't like it, there's the door, and I've kicked people out for saying stuff that I could tell the direction that they were headed. And it was just like, you need to stop, because that's just disrespectful to somebody. And whether that there's somebody here or not that might, if there's somebody not here, you think that it's okay. It's not. Right. I don't take that. And in somebody else's shop, that might be okay, but for me, it's not. And I hope that I've made that very known over the course of the few years. I try to keep it as diverse as possible, because at one point I was just like, I wanted everybody cutting hair the way I cut hair, because it was like I was the face of the shop for a year and a half. It was just me. And when you're flying solo, you generate that, like, everybody knew my values. Everybody knew how I approached life and haircuts. And that became a super important thing to me. So that when I started hiring people, I was like, no, you got to do this my way. And eventually, on our third year of being open, I had a breakdown. It was Thanksgiving week. And when you've got 5 barbers or 4 other barbers, and they're all great barbers, but you have this mentality of like, I'm going to check your haircuts and make sure that you're living up to this and you're doing that. And then I took a time out, and I realized, like, one, I can't do that to myself, and I can't do that to them. I got to learn to trust these guys. I hired them for a reason, or girls, because I have had women working in the shop, which unfortunately they, for whatever reason, didn't work out, unfortunately, because I push that. I want anybody and everybody are welcome in that shop, as long as you're not an asshole. It's my one thing.
Yeah, be nice or leave.
Yeah, exactly. There's no room for hate in that shop whatsoever. But I want that diversity in people, just because that brings in a diverse group of people, and especially in the state that we're in, it's very, like, barbershops have been segregated for so long out here. And part of that has to be that they're just, I don't know where the separation really happened, but it's unfortunate that it happened. And
I feel like it was a lack of willingness to learn at some point.
Yes, and unfortunately that happened across the board. Young, old, black, white, Latino, or it didn't matter. Everybody just decided, like, no, this is the thing that I'm going to do, and I'm going to do just that. And it's like, what happened to this industry where, where barbers even started going like, I don't cut long hair. Now, granted, I don't do as many long haircuts as I did in school. I haven't. So is a cosmetologist theoretically better at doing that than I am? 100%, because they've put more time into styling it and stuff. But if I had 100 people coming in the door that were like, leave my hair long, Cool. Let's leave it alone. I don't care. It's putting hair on the floor. It doesn't matter. And it's so strange that to some people, they still have this mentality of like, if I want this hairstyle, I have to go to this type of person. And that's one thing I love about California is California isn't like that because it's such a diverse state. Like,
right. They can't do that because it won't be sustainable there.
It's not.
For here, I think there became a situation, for anybody that doesn't know, New Hampshire is about 97% white. So the 3% of not white are pretty congregated in like 3 or 4 different cities or towns in the state. But I think because of that, people were allowed to be specialists. And you had no other choice but to shop around and find whoever was willing to do your hair.
Exactly.
Because it's kind of like left-handed barbers. We can only find shears, 10% because that's the market. And unfortunately, that's what you're dealing with. So they just played to the majority of the clients. And I think that's probably where it happened. Not to say that it's justified or anything, but people play to markets in a free market society. But I think it's an unwillingness to learn, and I don't know if it's a lack of pride, because I would have a serious issue with somebody coming in and me having to say that I can't cut a certain type of hair.
Oh, completely
I pride
agree.
myself as a well-rounded barber that is willing to tackle anything that walks through that door. As long as you're human and it's from the neck up, I got you. No problem.
You don't want to do back shaves?
It's not my thing. I'll leave that to you.
I'm not going to mention any shop names, but I know that there are some shops that do back shaves, and that is more than I'm willing to do. That's just too much surface area. I don't have that time, or at least not to devote to that. No, I don't know. I've had that mentality where like I've had to tell people where people have questioned it because, like, okay, maybe I haven't done your hair texture as much as I'd like, but I'll tell them flat out, like, only way I'm going to get better at it is you coming in here. So if you like hanging out with me and you like being in the shop, I'm only going to get better doing it.
If you're willing to work with me, I'll work with you.
And that's the thing. And like, and I've told people that have doubted me, I was like, look, man, if you're not satisfied with your haircut, it'll be on the house. Like, I'm at least confident enough in myself or in like the experience that you're going to have in my shop that I hope that'll carry me and that'll get me through. And I'm like, if I don't 100% nail it today, I'm going to learn a lot about your head and your hair and any of those little tricky spots that you might have that I didn't know about that, might have tripped me up a little bit, and I'll hopefully nail it next time.
And I feel like it's our responsibility as the barber to really put forward that clear message of our willingness that, hey, if I didn't go short enough, tell me. I'll fix it.
Yeah.
Shorter is always an option. But I feel like so many customers have had that experience of if they speak up about something that they were shown their haircut and they didn't like or they wanted changed, that they're like being shamed into being quiet just by the sheer atmosphere and the vibe coming off of the person who's cutting their hair. Mm-hmm. That they're like beaten into submission with an energy. Like nothing really verbal has been exchanged, but they just feel like, oh, well, they seem like they really want to get me out of the chair, so I guess I'm done now. Instead of going, hey, can we take this a little bit shorter because, it tends to flop in my face.
Yeah.
But it's really our responsibility to create and maintain that energy and willingness to be like, hey, if there's something up, let me know. I'm willing to fix it. No problem.
That's always been my approach, but I've also added to that of being like, if you don't like it, I will gladly take it shorter, but I probably approached it this way because fill in the blank. If you still don't like my answer, all right. Like it's your hair at the end of the day. I might be the quote unquote professional about it, but like I'm doing what I think is best. But if it's not what makes you happy, then I don't want to do that because then the odds of you coming back in are slim to none. And that's what I want. If you come in one time, that does nothing for me.
Right. Well, and that communication is important.
and that's just it. And, you know, that person that comes in one time, if they don't have a good experience, they can tell other people about that bad experience, you know, that they had. And that bad experience is going to resonate with a lot more people. And I don't want that to affect the shop. So it's just like, no, just tell me. So we can compromise or something. You know, there's always an alternative.
For an ultimate goal. Like,
yeah,
it's both parties. You know, it takes two to tango. It's kind of like the mess that happened with the barber in Michigan, where it was like, all right, he's cutting hair against the stay-at-home order, and he, you know, gets his license suspended or taken away, and it's all right, but what are you doing to every single person that actively chose to sit in that man's chair?
Yeah.
Because guess what? He's not putting a gun to their head and going, I'm going to cut your hair, whether you like it or not. It's two adults that are making a decision to get their hair cut.
Oh, and that's so it's the same thing with in California. There's a barber about, I think it's like an hour, maybe 2 hours north of where we live, that's been doing that. And his approach is, well, I'm a lawyer. And my first thought is like, are you not a good lawyer because you're cutting hair? And like, are you barbering because it's a passion, or because you're better at this than you were at being a lawyer? And he's just like, go ahead, take my license and do this and do that. And you can give me fines because I'm not going to pay them, and you can take me to court. I'm like, whoa, like, first, like, that's not healthy for any of us to have that attitude. Like, you can't look at that, because that's just, at that point too, it's selfish as hell.
Like, divisive.
And like, we all want to be back to work. We all wanted to be back to work. None of us wanted to take 12 weeks off out there. Like, that killed us in every sense of the word. And like, $1,200 can get you somewhere in Florida, but the Northeast or like the West Coast, the Midwest, like,
is that 2 weeks rent?
Yeah, it's just like, you know, like, that doesn't pay anybody's bills, and it's not sustainable for anybody. And it's like, we don't want it, but like, let's just all work together and try and end this as quick as we can, so we can all get back to, whether it's the new norm, or hopefully at some point we can get back to the way things were a few months ago. Because that's what we all want. Like, none of us want to be in this situation. And I feel like so many people are forgetting that, which breaks my heart, really. Because it's just like, yeah, it sucks, dude. Like, it sucks for me just as much as it sucks for you. Like, you're not special with this.
Everybody has their struggles. But the whole reason I brought up the Michigan was because you have to have two people in order to achieve the service. Like,
yeah,
both parties have to be willing and active to participate in service to occur. I learned this when I went to butler school, as much as, you know, dealing with customers in a barbershop, which is you have to have both parties in order to give service and to receive service properly. Mm-hmm. So in order to achieve, because you're both there for the same reason, same goal, so you got to work together for it, rather than it's just one person's game and the other one's just along for the ride.
I think out there, if two people get caught, it's a felony. At least back in California, it is very questionable why. Because, like you said, you can't hold one person accountable without holding both people accountable. Right. It's like breaking up a gambling ring somewhere and holding the person running it accountable, but everybody else that was gambling is fine.
Yeah, racketeering.
Yeah. Was that what that's called?
I think so.
Okay. I thought that had to do with racquetball. It's a terrible joke. Sorry.
I feel like I've watched enough cop movies and mobster movies that eventually you start to deduce what it means.
Yeah, you'd think with all the movies that I've watched that I would gather that by now, but apparently not.
Come on, Peaky Blinders, something.
I still can't get into it.
The haircuts really bother me. I gotta be honest.
Dude, Tom used to tear me to shreds when, like, because I started getting in kids, like, way back when that show first came out. Give me the Peaky Blinders cut. I was like, all right, I guess I'll F up your haircut. And then Tom would be like, dude, you let that guy leave the shop like that. I'm like, dude, like, piss off. Like, come on, man. Like, he asked for that. I gave him a crappy haircut, okay? Like, I gave it to him completely disconnected, no blend at all, for no apparent reason whatsoever. And then, like, it would take, like, the third time around, and it was partially, like, also that look, the kid's going to leave super stoked. You know, he's like 17 years old. He's watching a show that he debatably shouldn't even be watching. And that's what he wants. But like, if I give him that haircut that I didn't want to do either, I can warm him up to a better version of it. Cause like, it's like that. I'm sure you get it. You know, you get somebody shows you like a haircut on Pinterest is like, did you want it like good or did you want that?
Oh, 100%. I go, can I give you that only better? And they're like, yeah, give me that only better. Can do. Now we're on my page. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
But I think it took me a little bit to get comfortable with that. So I would like warm people up before. Now I'm just like, oh, that looks bad. Like I can do a good version of that. Like that looks like the guy's girlfriend cut it.
That's like automatically what I do. Like before I would explain it and be like, so you see this? I don't really necessarily like, do you want that? And they're like, no, not necessarily. And I'm like, all right, well, how about we do something similar? Now I just do what I know is going to look fantastic. That's as close to that as possible. We don't even have a conversation anymore.
So like, I don't know how you've been with this, but I have a real hard time disassociating some of the stuff that we learned in school. Like I can't, so many of my haircuts don't technically blend, but it's also because I know that person's 100% styling their haircut every single time. The people that come in that want these like textured haircuts and stuff is like, yeah, that looks cool, but the only way it's going to look like that is if I style your hair because I know where I left this section longer and I took this shorter, and it's barber porn.
Yeah.
That's what that's what
All of Instagram.
because it looks great in a photo, and it's like, yeah, that person, there was like one person did the color, one person did the fade, one person cut the top, or sometimes the person that did the fade also cut the top. There's at least two people involved and a half hour to an hour of styling the hair, and it looks amazing. And I can't sell any of those barbers short because they know their shit. They're killing it. But somebody shows me those pictures and I'm like, I'm going to give you something that's got a little bit of texture in it because like you came in without your hairstyle. Then I don't know if that's because you took a shower before you got here or because you just don't want to do it all the time. Like I can make that look good, but the time you don't style your hair and you don't style it perfectly, it's going to look that way. And like I used to tell people that. Now I just I'm like, look, man, you said you saw like what I'm all about or what my shop's about. I'm going to approach it the way I approach it because I'm not that barber. And like those guys, those people are trying to reinvent themselves and they're doing amazing at it, but it's not me. And I don't know if you're the same way.
So, I mean, if you take a look at my Instagram, that's basically, I don't take a lot of pictures of haircuts anymore. Yeah. When I first opened and through, I mean, there's been some heavy points, but for the most part, I am still that barber that it's like, I'm gonna gauge it based on our consultation. And hey, if you're somebody that puts product in your hair, is gonna style it every day, I'm going to make it look the way you want it to look.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of the people that we get in shop up here, because of the virtue of geography, it's most people want a real low maintenance haircut. I maintain the mantra of the average person that goes into a barbershop, and maybe this is just New England or New Hampshire, but the average person walking into a barbershop wants a haircut that'll look as good for as long as possible with little to no help on their part. So
completely, and that's what I tell a lot, especially new clients, is just like, I want to give you a haircut that's going to look as good when you leave the shop as it does in whether it's 2 weeks or 2 months. 2 months you're going to be shaggy. There's no way you're not going to be. It doesn't matter what you got for a haircut. It's grown out an inch of hair. Like that's a lot of hair. But the next person, if I'm not the person that cuts it because you're on vacation and you're out here or whatever the case may be, the next person's going to be able to figure it out what we did and hopefully go off of that roadmap that we laid out, because I want something that's going to grow out good for you. And like, that's one thing that we push in our shop is shape over everything, because like, yeah, you can have the most killer fade, but how many people are looking at the side of the person's head? The fade is important. It's not like it's not, but the look when somebody looks at somebody, because we have conversations eye to eye, not eye to side of the head. So like looking by somebody when you're walking by is like, yeah, that looks awesome. But like if the shape is weird from the front of the head, the shape is weird, and like people are drawn to that. We really are. And it's like, did they mean to do that? Or like, one side might look a little higher than the other, and all it would have taken was like some freehand clipper or maybe a little shear work to have cleaned up the other side so it looked even. So that's been like one big thing that we've pushed, and my guys have, back in the day would questioned it before, and they're like, well, why is that? Because everybody looks at the fade, and it's like, but they don't.
No, in fact, most people don't know the difference between a supercuts clipper on the back versus a barbershop cut. Like, until you point it out to them, the average person doesn't know the difference, which is why they continue to be open.
Exactly. I mean, my wife never knew the difference between the backs of the necks, and now she can never unsee that now, because I've pointed it out so many times since the day we started dating. She sees it now, and she's just like, oh, there are guys here have such terrible backs of their heads. I can't stand it. I'm like, yeah, yep. I'm like, that's how I feel.
The longer you go to a good shop and see those things, the more you start to realize it. Just like customers that have been going to the school for over a decade. Like, they know exactly what they get in our lingo because they've gone that many times, and they can tell the difference. But, I mean, you surround yourself with enough smart people or enough people that are very knowledgeable in one profession, you're bound to pick up some stuff.
Yeah.
Which is cool because, I mean, you're inadvertently educating your customers, and sometimes very deliberately educating them, whether it's on, hair maintenance, shampoo, skin stuff. I mean, that's part of the fun of being a barber.
That's one thing that I actually miss about our original website that I had for the shop. I had a blog on it, and I just don't have the time anymore. Like, I was really doing the blog because it was like, oh, there's a dead space in the day and I'm by myself. Like, I'm going to be productive about this. And it's like, I had so many clients, it would like, they would come in and be like, so I read that thing, like, what's a good razor to get and why? And because there's so much of society has told us, like, this is this way, like, how many people use dandruff shampoo because they have dry scalp? They're using the exact opposite of what they need to use. But it's because somebody told them that those flakes, because of Head and Shoulders, that's dandruff. And it's like, no, that's, like, dandruff is gross and yellow and sticky and smelly, and it's not dry skin.
Well, and worse, the market actually plays to that ignorance for a lot of people. So something that is meant for dry scalp, they put anti-dandruff on that too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help anybody.
Exactly. And I mean, we're still of that mindset with so many people. And that was the crazy thing with guys, especially versus women. Like, I'll talk to somebody and they shampoo their hair every single day, never use conditioner. But then you talk to their girlfriend, and their girlfriend's like, oh, I condition every day and I shampoo like maybe twice a week. And I was like, why don't you tell him this? You guys have been together forever. Why don't you tell him, like, he goes through way more shampoo than you do, and that's weird. I'm like, but it never dawned on them. They just assumed that somebody else told them that too. And then the guy finally turns around and stops shampooing so much, and they're like, oh my God, my head feels better. I'm like, yeah. Because that's
constantly telling people to steal their girlfriend and wife's conditioner.
Yeah.
Always. I go, it's in your shower. Just use it.
Use your wife's conditioner and use a blow dryer for your hair. How do I get the hair to look so high? You got to use a blow dryer. I don't want to do that. Like, we're going to approach a different haircut then. Like,
we got to work on what you're willing to do.
Yeah, you can't have a pompadour without a hair dryer, and people are like, "Oh, I can do that." And then
using a brush. You have to have a brush.
But I mean, that's like one of the most fun things I think about this job is when you get somebody that's been getting a haircut for so long, and like their number one thing is like, I don't know why it doesn't look the way it looks when my barber does it. And then you get them in your chair for your first time, you're like, oh, jackpot. Like, I might not even get to know this guy so much because I'm going to start rambling so much on educating him. And hopefully he doesn't think that I'm a dweeb about this. And hopefully I didn't just, annoy him or give him way too much information for him to take home and process. Hopefully learn something from it. because at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do. But like, we've learned so much about it that it's like, I'm like, I got so much to tell you.
We're barber nerds.
Yeah.
Well, and I find that even just conversations in general, because by virtue of having 6 chairs in my shop and 5 barbers working right now, our personalities are so diverse that I always say to new customers, I go, we each have our conversation buttons. And be careful when you push them, because we will go and just like talk incessantly about whatever that subject is. And I go, I can list 3 for each of us that if you want to push them, then go to that chair because you'll have a fantastic time. You go, if you want to talk about guns or hunting and fishing and music, like hit up Tyler. If you want to talk about paintball or history or video games, go to Harvard. If you want to talk about city issues, Disney, or barbering, sit with me.
That's completely the way our shop is. And we've had people come in before and they're like, they'll complain to another client because the other client recommended them to come in, and they'd be like, man, like Corey didn't shut up about movies the whole time. I just want to talk about sports. And they're like, you should have sat with Aaron then, you know, when Aaron was working with us. And I'm like, or you should have sat with Matt, you know. I have a couple of my guys when I moved that told me flat out, like, Matt's my guy. And the reason why is he likes wrestling. They love wrestling. So you want to talk Monday Night Raw? Talk with Matt. And at least our shop is very open to the idea of, like, you can sit with me and talk to Caleb, and you can sit with Caleb and talk with Matt. And, you know, like, none of us are negatively affected by that. Like, it's like, okay, you like my haircut, but you love his conversation. Just like let's go. You know, but that's the thing too, is there's something for everybody in the shop, in like mine just as much as yours. That it's like, if you didn't find the right guy, listen to what the other guys are talking about, because like they're going to be the right person for you.
Well, and I think it's a responsibility of shop owners and the people working in the shop to really create a cohesive atmosphere, so the customers know that, hey, just because you came in here and, you know, you liked my haircut, but you wanted a conversation with somebody else. Like, if you want to wait for them, you're not going to hurt anybody's feelings.
Exactly.
Like, we're fine with that. You're here. We're happy you're here. We're happy to see you no matter how often we see you. It's just like, you're once a year. Happy you're here, man. Like, you're doing good in life. I'm glad you're alive. Happy to see your smiling face. So, like, our feelings don't get hurt just because you want to sit in somebody else's chair. But that's because we've created that kind of an atmosphere. So many places, they're like, I kind of wanted to wait for Joe. Is that cool?
Yep.
Or some, like, where the barbers are actually butthurt. They, you know, offer, hey, can I help you? And they're like, no, I'm going to wait for, you know, Matt over there. And then they just, like, put up a wall and was like, all right, screw you then.
Yeah, and they walk away cold-shouldered.
You're not a professional when you do that.
And that's been our thing too, is we've had a lot of that, or we've had somebody who's like, I'm sorry, I'm sitting with Caleb today. And I was like, I don't care. You're still coming into my barbershop. Right. I'm like, if you got to go somewhere else, then go somewhere else. Like, but like, maybe please don't. I'd rather have you come in here. And like, I've had that before where I've had guys that are like, I've had one customer one time told me, he's like, well, I didn't come in to see Caleb or Matt because I only sit with shop owners. And I was like, I don't even know if I want you sitting in my chair anymore, man. Like, that's kind of that's a dick weird approach to take, because I was on vacation. Like, I was gone for 4 days. Like, so one, you couldn't have waited 4 more days for a haircut, for one thing. 2, you like hanging out with them when you're here. You talk to them. Like, you have deep conversations with them. What kind of pompous ass says something like that? And like, I don't want to say that about somebody, but like, what the hell else am I supposed to say? Because it's like, you like the environment here. If you like the environment here, come here. If you don't, I'm not going to be upset about it. And I'm not upset that you went to somebody else. But like, don't make a comment like that. Like, I go out of my way to hire the people that I hire.
Exactly. Because you're the shop owner, you control who's working there. So they work here for a reason. If I didn't think that they could handle my clientele, they probably wouldn't be here.
That's exactly it. And it's so funny. And then the next time they come in, they actually like did get a haircut from Caleb, and they're like, man, he gave me one of the best haircuts I've ever had. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, the kid's going to hit it out of the park. He's a fantastic barber. And you just never wanted to give him a chance for whatever reason. Like, and your viewpoint on it is just like, is that how you view the world? Like, you'll only go into a shoe store and talk to the owner of the shop? Because like that nerdy kid wearing the Yeezys couldn't possibly know everything about every sneaker in the room. Like, is that like what you think? Because that's weird. Like, that kid might even know more than the owner because he's more in touch with it because he's got more time for those sneakers. You know, he's got more time to invest in like checking that stuff out, or that's just his passion and that's why he works there. Right. Which at the end of the day is like, hopefully everybody in a barbershop is working there because they're passionate about it, not because it's a trendy thing or whatever. Like, I don't know. That's one thing that kind of worries me about barbering, but also doesn't. The real are going to stick around no matter what happens. But like, it was blowing up when you and I got into it, and it's exploded even more so, especially in New England. I see so many people doing it. And I was just like, are you doing it because it's cool right now? Or are you doing it because you're passionate about it? And like, there's no wrong answer to that. If you're doing it because it's cool, then like, cool. I hope it works out for you. And I hope someday you can maybe take it for more than that. Because it is a cool job. We have an awesome job. That's why we do it. Right. But like, I want you to I hope that someday you'll get like this is your thing.
And talking about New England especially, I think here in New England, because we were starved for barbers for so long, like having 600 barbers in the state, 10 years ago? It's an insanely low number compared to the number of cosmetologists. But to grow to, I think, over 4,000 now, it's insane growth in 10 years. But I think that's because we had such a deficit for so long. But I do think that because we have filled in that gap now, that you'll start to see more people come into the profession and use that as a way to financially be able to go to other passions. Like, I have a barber right now who is working full-time and taking college courses to do programming because he wants a change. Mm-hmm. And barbering, as long as you keep up with it, like, you can work your way through whatever else you want to learn, and it's a great alternative to going into debt right away, going to college. Like, if you want to work your way through college, this is a great way to do it. I know a cosmetologist who worked her way through law school as well as pastoral school, and also owned a salon at one point. So if you have more than one passion, this is a really great profession to start in, to just branch off to wherever you want to go.
That's, we have one of our really close shop friends is very, very passionate about food. He always has been. And he took the leap and got a food truck. So he can't work full-time as a barber anymore. But it's like, he loves barbering as much as he loves food. Like, they're both equally important to him. So he's like, he wants to split the difference. And that's incredible. I just don't want to see people doing it for the wrong reason, because it's that cool thing. And then it goes on to be something else and they never do it again. Like, I want both my kids to learn how to barber, and it's not because I want them to follow in my footsteps and I want them working for me. No, I want to apprentice them when they turn, was it 16, I think, in the state of New Hampshire? They can apprentice. So like, I can start teaching kids at home when they're younger. And like, by the time they're 16, they're not going to need me looking over their shoulder, because they can be an awesome barber. And while their friends making like $200 a week in the summer working at Market Basket part-time, they can work 3 days a week or full-time in the shop and make hundreds and hundreds of dollars and pocket that. And then when they go to school, if they want to go to school and pursue their stuff, and like, this is a regular conversation with my wife and I, is like, I really want my son to be a barber, and I don't want him to do it because like, it's not his thing. And I know it's not his thing, but like, I want him to do it because it's a job where he could make good money while he's in school and not have to fret, like, he can do, whether it's like a haircut a night or 2 haircuts a night, and he'll have plenty of money for food and be taken care of, and he's not going to be stressing about this, that, or the other thing. Because that's the ability that we have to do that for our children, I think, is not necessarily a responsibility to do it, but it's almost like, I don't know what else to call it. And it's just because I want to look out for their best interest. And if they don't want to do it, then fine. I'm not going to push it. It's just important to me in that respect because, like you said, it can bring them to that passion that they really have, and it can put them through that, and they're not going to have to. And then you're also not going to have to ever worry, because if an industry collapses on itself, hopefully this is, I mean, it's obviously not pandemic proof, but it's fairly recession proof.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
under any normal circumstances.
Under normal circumstances with a recession, like, we're going to be hit. Any industry is. That's the whole, by definition, that's what's going to happen to the world when that happens. But you can survive and get through. So, like, I like that idea of, like, my kids having, potentially at least, having that fallback. So that if something happens, they can be like, I'm jobless, but I know I can go get a job at the shop down the street because for $50 every 2 years, I kept my license active.
Well, and having that compulsion as a parent to really give your child every opportunity. Like, it's their choice what they want to do ultimately, but if you can open a door so that they have an option, like, why wouldn't you do that?
Exactly.
Man, Corey, it's been a wonderful conversation. It's been 7 years overdue.
Oh, for sure. I'm glad that you actually asked me to do this, and I'm even more glad that I was home and able to do it as opposed to over FaceTime, because
I know I'm stoked that we could actually use my setup, number one, but that I didn't have to figure out how to
make that work.
Record things over the internet.
It's easy, but not easy. It's also kind of a pain in the butt. This is awesome. I'm glad that we got to do this and talk about stuff.
So, what do you got going on moving forward? What's your next goal? That way we can keep an eye out for you.
Opening Stay True 2. Name to be decided later. It will not be Stay True 2, because that is just, I make enough rhyming jokes and stuff with Stay True. Like Stay True Coffee Crew, because we all like coffee and like all the dorky things that we do. But that's our next endeavor. Anywhere from like a 1 to 3 man shop out in Northern California. We're still trying to feel out where we want it. You know, when the right space comes along, we'll jump on that opportunity. For now, just trying to really just get back to work. I mean, that's part of the reason I came back home, you know, and I'm happy that I was in a situation where I'm fortunate enough to do this, because so many people aren't. But really, it was just about getting back behind the chair and cutting again, because I love this job. It's been weird without it.
It's very surreal. Well, it's been wonderful having you. Thank you so much for making the trek up here.
Thank you.
And we'll keep an eye out for you.
Awesome. Thank you, Bree.